Are we about to face a disaster of cosmic proportions? The thought of a massive asteroid racing toward Earth has the power to send shivers down anyone's spine. And yet, here we are, contemplating a scenario that seemed far-fetched just a few decades ago. It all began in 2004, when a team of astronomers made a shocking discovery: a previously unknown asteroid, later named 99942 Apophis, was hurtling through space at breakneck speed. The asteroid, about 350 meters in diameter, was a serious cause for concern, especially when initial observations suggested that it might collide with Earth. This revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific community and sparked a frenzy in the media. After all, an asteroid of this size striking Earth could have devastating consequences. But how likely is it that this massive rock will crash into our planet, and what would happen if it did? At first, the prospects were grim. When Apophis was first discovered, astronomers calculated that it could pass as close as 32,000 kilometers from Earth on April 13, 2029, a Friday the 13th no less. This was dangerously close in terms of space, as it would skim just beneath Earth's geostationary orbit, where communications satellites orbit. The media wasted no time in branding Apophis as a killer asteroid that could potentially bring about the end of civilization as we know it. In the early days, the threat seemed almost inevitable. The initial estimates by NASA scientists placed the likelihood of an impact at 2.7% for the 2029 flyby, with a possibility of future impacts in 2036 and 2068. These were scary numbers, especially when you consider that the asteroid's impact could release an unimaginable amount of energy, 900 million tons of TNT, enough to destroy a large region of Earth and potentially cause widespread destruction. Back then, the news was shocking. People were gripped by fear, imagining the asteroid crashing into Earth with catastrophic results. Media outlets painted a picture of a fiery end, similar to the event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. The comparisons to the extinction-level event that occurred when an asteroid hit Earth and caused the mass extinction of the dinosaurs were hard to ignore. If Apophis were to strike, it could cause a massive impact event, creating an impact crater miles wide and releasing enough energy to obliterate entire cities, continents, or even trigger a global climate catastrophe. At the very least, the initial predictions suggested that it could wipe out a region the size of Central Europe. The mere thought of such a disaster is enough to make anyone sit up and pay attention. However, as time passed and scientists gathered more data, the panic began to subside. NASA and other space agencies closely monitored Apophis, recalculating its trajectory with each new observation. By 2005, after a year of detailed tracking, scientists had revised their estimates. The chances of a catastrophic collision in 2029 had significantly dropped, and in the years that followed, further calculations made it clear that Earth would not be hit. In fact, by 2021, the threat from Apophis was considered virtually non-existent. The asteroid would fly safely past Earth in 2029 and continue its orbit without any risk of collision. But this doesn't mean the story ends here. The case of Apophis is far from settled, and new developments have emerged that suggest the asteroid may still pose a risk in the future. Despite the reassuring updates, there's still one big factor that has scientists on edge: the possibility that Apophis' orbit could change, making a future collision a more probable event. This is where Canadian astronomer Paul Weird comes in. Weird has been studying the potential risks associated with Apophis and has suggested that a collision could still be in the cards, just not in the way we originally feared. While the chances of an impact in 2029 remain incredibly low, Weird's research points to a fascinating possibility: that the asteroid could be nudged off course by a smaller object or by the sun's radiation pressure. Here's how it works: space objects like asteroids are constantly influenced by forces beyond their control. One such force is the Yarkovsky effect, a phenomenon that causes an asteroid's orbit to slowly shift due to the way it absorbs and re-emits solar radiation. This effect can cause an asteroid to drift off its original path over time, which means that even if Apophis misses Earth in 2029, it could eventually come back into the Earth's vicinity, potentially on a collision course. In fact, astronomers have already observed this phenomenon in action with Apophis. The asteroid is slowly being pushed off its original path by the sun's radiation, moving around 170 meters each year. While this change is not enough to make Apophis hit Earth in 2029, it could influence its orbit in future passes, especially in 2036 or 2068. This could bring Apophis into Earth's gravitational influence and set the stage for a potential impact. But wait, there's more. Not only is the asteroid's orbit changing due to solar radiation, but it also faces the possibility of being hit by another object in space. It may sound like the stuff of science fiction, but smaller asteroids or space debris could strike Apophis and alter its trajectory. WEIRD's research has shown that even a relatively small impact could change Apophis' velocity by a fraction of a meter per second, enough to send it into a different orbit that could bring it closer to Earth. This is where things get really interesting. According to WEIRD, even an object just 60 centimeters across could have enough force to redirect Apophis. And there's more. Space agencies, including NASA, have developed strategies for deflecting asteroids by crashing into them with spacecraft, like the successful 2020 DART mission. But while these deflection strategies work on small objects like Didymos moonlet, they may have serious consequences if attempted on a giant asteroid like Apophis. So, what would happen if Apophis were to change course and head toward Earth? Well, the first thing to consider is the sheer size and power of the asteroid. Apophis is not large enough to cause a global extinction event like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, but it would still cause massive destruction. The impact would create a crater several kilometers wide, and the energy released would be sufficient to level entire cities or even cause a regional catastrophe. Imagine the force of the explosion equivalent to 900 million tons of TNT. By comparison, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945 had a force of just 15,000 tons of TNT. The scale of destruction would be immense, especially if Apophis were to strike a populated area. A direct hit could flatten entire cities, trigger wildfires, and release massive amounts of dust and debris into the atmosphere, potentially leading to climate disruptions. If Apophis were to strike the ocean, the consequences could be even worse. A large asteroid impact in the sea would create a massive tsunami, potentially more than 100 meters high. This would devastate coastal regions and displace millions of people. The energy from the impact would also cause massive shockwaves and earthquakes, further exacerbating the destruction. While the asteroid is too small to cause a global extinction event, the localized effects would be catastrophic. It's hard to imagine the scale of such a disaster, but it would undoubtedly leave a lasting mark on human civilization. However, before you start preparing for an apocalypse, it's important to note that the chances of Apophis hitting Earth in 2029, or any time in the foreseeable future, are still extremely low. Despite the potential for changes in its orbit, astronomers have consistently recalculated its trajectory and determined that the risk of an impact is incredibly small. In fact, the likelihood of Apophis colliding with Earth in 2029 is about 1 in 100 million, with even smaller odds of a collision in later years. WEIRD himself has pointed out that while the possibility exists, the chances of it actually happening are so remote that they are essentially negligible. The asteroid is on a carefully monitored trajectory, and scientists will continue to keep a close eye on it in the years to come. Even though the risk of a direct collision is exceedingly low, scientists are not taking any chances. In fact, space agencies around the world have already started planning for a potential asteroid deflection mission. NASA's DART, Double Asteroid Redirection Test, mission was a groundbreaking success, showing that it's possible to change the course of an asteroid by crashing a spacecraft into it. If Apophis were to become a more significant threat in the future, similar missions could be launched to nudge the asteroid off course before it reaches Earth. But the good news is that these calculations and deflection strategies aren't just hypothetical, they are part of a global effort to prepare for any potential asteroid threat. And what about our ability to detect threats in the future? The truth is that asteroid tracking technology has come a long way since Apophis first appeared on our radar. In fact, scientists are now developing new methods to monitor asteroids more effectively, including plans to send small satellites to accompany Apophis as it passes by Earth. These satellites will help track its movement with even greater precision and provide valuable data for future deflection efforts. By 2027, when Apophis will return to Earth's field of view, scientists will be able to better understand its trajectory and make any necessary adjustments to future calculations. The key takeaway here is that we are not entirely powerless in the face of a potential asteroid impact. While the chances of a collision are incredibly small, we are actively working to monitor, assess, and potentially deflect dangerous objects in space. In conclusion, the fear of a deadly asteroid impact from Apophis is largely based on initial miscalculations and media sensationalism. While it's true that the asteroid poses a potential risk, the likelihood of it actually striking Earth in the near future is exceedingly low. As of now, Apophis is expected to pass harmlessly by our planet in 2029, with no immediate risk of collision. However, scientists continue to monitor the asteroid's orbit closely, as slight changes in its trajectory could bring it into a dangerous path in the future. Regardless, it's important to remember that the scientific community is actively preparing for potential asteroid threats, and we have the technology and knowledge to protect ourselves. So, while the idea of a catastrophic asteroid impact is frightening, the chances of it actually happening are very small, and even if it did, humanity has a fighting chance.